My name is Grant Harris, and until 3 months ago, I thought I had it all figured out. 39 years old, decent job as a risk analyst for a mid-size insurance company, nice house in Maple Ridge subdivision, and a wife who still turned heads at neighborhood barbecues. Turns out I was analyzing all the wrong risks. Grant, we need to talk. Erin's voice cut through the evening news like a blade through paper. She stood in our kitchen doorway, still wearing her navy business suit from her HR manager job downtown. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, makeup flawless despite working a 10-hour day. That should have been my first clue. Something was wrong. I muted the television and turned to face her. Sure, what's up? She walked to the kitchen island, her heels clicking against the hardwood floors we'd installed last spring. Everything about her posture screamed rehearsed speech. Her hands were clasped in front of her, shoulders squared, chin slightly raised. I'd seen this stance before during her presentations at company parties. I've been thinking about us, she began, her voice steady and clinical. About our marriage, our future, what we both want. The words hit me like a punch to the gut, but I kept my expression neutral. 20 years of corporate meetings had taught me to never show weakness during negotiations. Okay, and what conclusion did you reach? She took a deep breath, and for a moment I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt? Regret? It vanished so quickly I might have imagined it. I'm sleeping with Tom. The room went silent, except for the hum of our stainless steel refrigerator. Tom Reddick, my best friend since college. The guy who'd been my best man at our wedding, the same Tom who came over every Thursday night for poker, who borrowed my tools, who knew where I kept the spare key to my house. Tom Reddick? I asked, though we both knew there was only one Tom in our social circle. Yes, she lifted her chin higher. It's been going on for 6 months. I'm not apologizing for it, and I'm not ending it. If you can't handle that reality, maybe we should discuss divorce. I stared at her, processing the words. 6 months. Half a year of Thursday night poker games where Tom sat at my kitchen table, drinking my beer, eating my wife's homemade cookies, all while he was sleeping with her behind my back. 6 months, I repeated. Yes? And you're telling me this because? She shifted her weight from one foot to the other, the first crack in her composed facade. Because I'm tired of sneaking around. Tom and I want to be together openly. His wife Jenny deserves to know the truth, and so do you. How considerate of you both. Don't be sarcastic, Grant. This is difficult enough. I stood up from the couch, my 6-foot frame giving me a slight height advantage over her 5'6". Difficult for who exactly? You've had 6 months to get used to this idea. I've had about 60 seconds. I know this is a shock. A shock? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Erin, finding out the coffee shop ran out of your favorite creamer is a shock. Discovering your wife is having an affair with your best friend is something else entirely. She crossed her arms over her chest. I'm not going to stand here and let you make me feel guilty about finding happiness. Happiness? I nodded slowly. Right. And where exactly have you been finding this happiness? Our guest bedroom, Tom's office, the back seat of his Mercedes? Her cheeks flushed red. That's none of your business. Actually, since you're still legally my wife, I'd say it's very much my business. We stood there staring at each other across our living room, surrounded by the life we'd built together. Wedding photos on the mantel, vacation souvenirs on the bookshelf, throw pillows she'd picked out last Christmas. All of it suddenly felt like props in a play I didn't remember auditioning for. So what happens now? I asked. That depends on you, she said. Tom and I aren't ending this relationship. We're in love, Grant. Real love, not the comfortable roommate situation you and I have been living in for the past few years. Comfortable roommate situation? When was the last time we went on a real date? When did we last have a conversation that wasn't about bills or schedules or whose turn it is to take out the trash? She had a point, though I wasn't about to admit it. So instead of talking to me about problems in our marriage, you decided to sleep with Tom. I tried talking to you. You're always buried in your laptop, analyzing risk assessments and insurance claims. When I suggested counseling last year, you said we didn't need it. I said we could work things out ourselves. Well, I worked it out, with Tom. The casual cruelty in her voice was like a slap. This wasn't the woman I'd married 15 years ago, that Erin had been warm, funny, spontaneous. She'd leave little notes in my lunch bag and surprise me with tickets to baseball games. This version of my wife was cold, calculating, and apparently capable of betraying the two people who trusted her most. Does Jenny know? I asked. Not yet. Tom's going to tell her this weekend. How noble of him. Grant, I know you're hurt. Hurt? I interrupted. Erin, I'm not hurt. I'm fascinated. I'm watching my wife of 15 years explain why she's been cheating on me like she's presenting a quarterly report. It's actually quite impressive." She frowned. "There's no need to be nasty about this." "Nasty? I haven't even started being nasty." "What's that supposed to mean?" "Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories." I walked to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator, pulling out a bottle of water. My hands were steady, my voice calm. It means I need some time to process this information and decide how I want to respond. "There's nothing to respond to, Grant. This is happening whether you like it or not. Tom and I are together now. You can either accept that and we'll figure out how to move forward, or you can make this difficult for everyone involved." I twisted the cap off the water bottle and took a long drink. "You know what's interesting about my job, Erin? I spend all day analyzing potential risks and calculating the probability of various outcomes. I look at patterns, study human behavior, predict how people will react in different situations." "What does that have to do with anything?" "It means I'm very good at anticipating consequences." I set the bottle on the counter and looked directly at her. "You've made your choice, and now you'll have to live with whatever comes next." Something in my tone made her take a step back. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you're right about one thing. There's nothing I can do to stop you from sleeping with Tom." I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "But there's quite a lot I can do about everything else. Grant, I think we're done talking for tonight. I'm going to finish watching the news, and then I'm going to bed. In the guest room, obviously, since I assume you'll want to call Tom and give him a full report on how this conversation went." She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. For the first time since she'd started her prepared speech, she looked uncertain. "Good night, Erin." I walked back to the living room and unmuted the television. Behind me, I heard her heels clicking against the hardwood as she went upstairs. A few minutes later, I heard her voice through the ceiling, muffled but animated, giving Tom his report, just as I'd predicted. I sat in my recliner, staring at the television without really seeing it. My mind was already working, analyzing the situation from every angle. Erin thought she held all the cards, but she'd made a critical error in judgment. She'd assumed I would react emotionally, that I'd either beg her to stay or storm out in a rage. Instead, I was going to do what I did best. I was going to assess the risks, study the patterns, and calculate the most effective response. Tom Reddick was about to learn that sleeping with another man's wife came with consequences he hadn't anticipated, and Erin was going to discover that her comfortable roommate had some very uncomfortable surprises in store. I reached for my laptop and opened a new document. At the top, I typed, "Project Payback, Risk Assessment and Implementation Strategy." Then I started typing. The next morning, Erin left for work without saying a word. She made her coffee, grabbed her purse, and walked out the front door like it was any other Thursday. Except it wasn't any other Thursday, because tonight was poker night, and Tom would be sitting at my kitchen table pretending to be my friend. I called in sick to work. First time in 3 years, but I needed the day to think and plan. My supervisor, Janet, didn't ask questions. She knew I wasn't the type to fake illness for a long weekend. After Erin's car disappeared down Maple Ridge Drive, I made myself breakfast and sat down with my laptop. The document I'd started the night before was still open, cursor blinking after the title. I cracked my knuckles and began typing. First, I needed to understand the full scope of the situation. 6 months of deception meant there was evidence somewhere. Text messages, emails, credit card statements, hotel receipts. Erin was smart, but she wasn't a spy. She'd gotten comfortable, and comfortable people made mistakes. I started with our joint credit card account. Online banking showed the usual charges, groceries, gas, her monthly hair appointment, but there were also charges I didn't recognize. Lunch at Romano's Italian Bistro on days when she claimed to be eating at her desk. A charge for Victoria's Secret 2 weeks ago, but she hadn't worn anything new around me. Hotel parking fees downtown on afternoons when she was supposedly in meetings. Each discovery was like a small cut, but I documented everything methodically. Dates, times, amounts. Patterns were emerging. My phone buzzed with a text message. Tom's name appeared on the screen. "Looking forward to poker tonight. Jenny's making her famous brownies for us." I stared at the message for a long moment. Jenny's famous brownies. Tom's wife was baking treats for the man who was cheating on her, and she had no idea. The casual cruelty of it made my stomach turn. I typed back, "Can't wait. Should be an interesting evening." Next, I checked Erin's laptop. She'd left it on the kitchen counter, probably rushed out the door after our conversation. We'd always trusted each other with passwords, another mistake on her part. Her email was password protected, but I knew she used the same password for everything. Sunshine 2008, the year we bought our house. Her personal email contained exactly what I expected. Dozens of messages from Tom, ranging from sweet to explicit. I took screenshots of the most damaging ones, including several that contained specific details about their encounters. One email from 3 weeks ago made me particularly angry. They'd used our house while I was at a conference in Chicago. Tom had been in my home, in my bed, with my wife. But anger wasn't useful right now. I needed to stay focused. I also found emails discussing their plans for the future. Tom was going to leave Jenny after their daughter's graduation in May. Erin wanted to wait until after her promotion review in June. They'd already looked at apartments together, including one in the Riverside complex where Tom's business partner lived. They had it all figured out, or so they thought. My phone rang. The caller ID showed my brother Mike's number. "Hey Grant, how's everything?" Mike was 2 years younger, lived in Denver with his wife and kids. We talked every few weeks, usually about sports or family news. Today, I needed a sounding board. "Actually, not great. Erin and I are having some problems." "Sorry to hear that. Want to talk about it?" I gave him the basics without going into explicit detail. Mike listened without interrupting, which was one of his best qualities. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "Jesus, Grant. I'm sorry. That's terrible." "Yeah, well, it is what it is. What are you going to do?" "I'm still figuring that out, but I'm not going down without a fight." "Just don't do anything stupid, okay? I know you're angry, but think about the long-term consequences. Don't worry. Everything I'm planning is completely legal." That's not exactly reassuring. It should be. I'm very good at staying within the rules while still getting what I want. After we hung up, I continued my research. Tom's real estate development company had a website with detailed information about his current projects. His biggest deal was a mixed-use development on the north side of town, a $20 million project that would make or break his company. The investor meetings were scheduled for next month. I also looked up Jenny Reddick on social media. Her Facebook page was full of happy family photos and proud posts about Tom's business success. She seemed genuinely in love with her husband, completely unaware that he was planning to abandon her. That bothered me more than I expected. Jenny didn't deserve this. She was collateral damage in Tom and Erin's selfish little romance. By afternoon, I had a clear picture of the situation and a rough plan for how to respond, but I needed more information, which meant I had to get through poker night without revealing what I knew. At 6 o'clock, I heard Tom's Mercedes pull into my driveway. Through the window, I watched him grab a case of beer from his back seat and walk up to my front door like he owned the place. He was whistling. The doorbell rang, and I took a deep breath before answering. "Grant." Tom's smile was wide and genuine, or at least a perfect imitation of genuine. "Ready to lose your money again?" "We'll see about that." Tom was 40 years old, 6'2", with the kind of easy confidence that came from never facing real consequences for his actions. He'd been handsome in college and had aged well, staying in shape and dressing like the successful businessman he'd become. I could understand why women found him attractive, though it disgusted me to think about Erin being one of them. "Erin working late again?" he asked as we walked to the kitchen. "Seems like she's always working late these days." "Jenny's the same way with her volunteer stuff. Sometimes I barely see her except at breakfast." The casual lies rolled off his tongue so easily. I wondered how long he'd been practicing deception, or if it just came naturally to him. Our other poker regulars arrived over the next few minutes. Dave from down the street, Marcus, who worked at the bank, and Jim from my office. Good guys, all of them, who had no idea they were about to witness the beginning of the most elaborate revenge plan I'd ever conceived. We settled around my kitchen table with our chips and cards. Tom sat directly across from me, just like always. He opened one of the beers he'd brought and took a long drink. "So how's business, Tom?" I asked as I dealt the first hand. "Really good, actually. That North Side project I've been working on is finally coming together. If everything goes according to plan, it'll be the biggest deal of my career." "That's great. I'm sure Jenny's proud of you." Something flickered across his face, so quickly I almost missed it. "Yeah, she is. Must be nice having such a supportive wife." "It is." He picked up his cards and arranged them in his hand. "You're lucky to have Erin, too. She's an amazing woman." I met his eyes across the table. "She certainly is. I can't imagine my life without her." "Well, you two seem really solid. Not like some of the couples in the neighborhood." "Oh? Anyone in particular?" Tom shrugged. "Just the usual suburban drama. You know how it is." I did know how it was. I was living it. The game continued for 2 hours. Tom won most of the hands, which wasn't unusual. He'd always been lucky at cards. Tonight, though, I let him win more than I normally would. I wanted him relaxed and confident. "Another beer?" I asked during a break between hands. "Sure, thanks." I got up and walked to the refrigerator, pulling out 2 bottles. While Tom was distracted by a conversation with Dave about golf, I palmed the small recording device I'd bought that afternoon. It was about the size of a quarter, with adhesive backing. I pressed it under the edge of the table, directly below where Tom was sitting. "Here you go." I handed him the beer and sat back down. "Thanks, buddy." Buddy. The word made me want to punch him in his lying face, but I kept my expression neutral. The game wrapped up around 11. Tom had won $87, which put him in an excellent mood. The other guys left first, and Tom lingered in my kitchen, finishing his beer. "Great game tonight," he said. "Same time next week?" "Actually, I might be traveling for work next Thursday. I'll let you know." "No problem. We can always reschedule." He stood up and stretched, then looked around my kitchen like he was memorizing it, which I realized he probably was. This might be one of the last times he'd be welcome in my house. "Tell Erin I said hello," he said as I walked him to the door. "I'll do that. And Grant, thanks for being such a good friend all these years. It means a lot to me." I opened the front door and watched him walk to his car. "Don't mention it, Tom. Really, don't mention it." After his Mercedes disappeared down the street, I went back to the kitchen and retrieved the recording device. It had captured everything, including a conversation Tom had with Marcus about his weekend plans. Plans that included taking a business trip to the mountains. The same weekend Erin had mentioned wanting to visit her sister. I uploaded the recording to my laptop and saved it in a folder labeled Evidence. Then I opened my planning document and added several new items to my to-do list. Tom thought he was getting away with the perfect crime, but he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd betrayed someone who made a living by analyzing risks and predicting outcomes, and I'd just predicted his downfall. Friday morning brought rain and an empty house. Erin had left early for what she claimed was a breakfast meeting with her team. I knew better. She was probably having coffee with Tom, planning their weekend getaway. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and my laptop, reviewing the evidence I'd gathered. Screenshots, credit card statements, recorded conversations, email exchanges. I had enough to prove their affair, but proof wasn't enough. I wanted consequences. My phone buzzed with a text from Erin. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." I typed back, "Have fun." She responded with a heart emoji, which would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. I spent the morning researching Tom's business dealings in more detail. His development company, Reddick Properties, was highly leveraged on the Northside project. He'd borrowed against everything he owned to secure the financing, including his house and his other properties. If the deal fell through, he'd lose everything. The project depended on city council approval for a zoning variance. The public hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Tom needed that approval to move forward, and he seemed confident he'd get it. His website even had architectural renderings of the finished complex. But confidence could be a weakness, especially when it led to carelessness. I drove downtown to the city planning office and requested copies of all documents related to Tom's project. As a taxpayer, I had the right to review public records. The clerk, a tired-looking woman named Patricia, handed me a thick folder. "There's a copying machine in the corner if you need it," she said. I spent 2 hours going through every page. Environmental impact studies, traffic analyses, financial projections, letters of support from local business groups. Everything looked legitimate and well-prepared. But buried in the technical specifications, I found something interesting. The proposed building height exceeded the current zoning limit by 12 feet. Tom's architect had noted this discrepancy and recommended applying for a height variance in addition to the use variance. However, the application Tom had submitted only requested the use variance. Either his lawyer had made a mistake, or Tom had deliberately omitted the height variance to avoid additional scrutiny. I made copies of the relevant pages and drove home to do more research. The city's zoning code was available online, and I spent the afternoon becoming an expert on height restrictions, setback requirements, and variance procedures. By evening, I had a plan. Saturday morning, I woke up early and drove to Tom's neighborhood. He lived in Willowbrook Estates, a newer development with large houses and manicured lawns. His house was a colonial-style mansion with a circular driveway and professionally landscaped gardens. Tom's Mercedes was in the driveway, along with Jenny's Honda. I parked across the street and waited. At 9:30, Jenny emerged from the house carrying a tennis bag. She got in her Honda and drove away, leaving Tom alone. I waited another 10 minutes, then drove to a coffee shop and called Tom's house. "Hello?" His voice sounded relaxed, probably thinking it was going to be a pleasant Saturday morning. "Tom, it's Grant. I hope I'm not calling too early." "Not at all. What's up?" I was wondering if you could help me with something. I'm thinking about refinancing my house, and I know you've worked with some good mortgage brokers. Could I come over and get some recommendations? Sure, no problem. Jenny just left for tennis, so now's actually perfect timing. Great. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I drove back to his neighborhood and parked in his driveway. Tom answered the door wearing jeans and a polo shirt, looking like the successful suburban dad he pretended to be. Come on in, he said. Want some coffee? That'd be great. His kitchen was twice the size of mine, with granite countertops and professional-grade appliances. Family photos covered the refrigerator, including several of Tom and Jenny's daughter at various ages. She was a pretty girl, probably around 17, with her mother's smile and her father's eyes. Beautiful family, I said, nodding toward the photos. Thanks. Ashley's a senior this year, planning to study business at State University. You must be proud. Very proud. He handed me a mug of coffee. So, refinancing, huh? Interest rates are still pretty good. Yeah, I figure now's a good time to lock in a lower rate. I took a sip of coffee and looked around his kitchen. This is a beautiful house, Tom. You've done well for yourself. Thanks. It's been a lot of hard work, but it's paid off. I'm sure it has. Speaking of work, how's that big development project going? His face lit up. Really well. The city council hearing is Tuesday, and I'm confident we'll get approval. This project is going to put my company on the map. That's fantastic. I'm sure Jenny's excited about your success. For just a moment, his smile faltered. Yeah, she is. It must be nice having such a supportive partner. Someone who believes in you no matter what. Absolutely. He set down his coffee mug and walked to a desk in the corner of the kitchen. Let me get you those broker recommendations. While he was looking through his files, I noticed his phone sitting on the counter. The screen was face up, and I could see text message notifications. One was from Erin. Can't wait for tonight. Love you. Tom returned with a piece of paper containing 3 names and phone numbers. These are all good people. Tell them I referred you, and they'll take good care of you. Thanks, I really appreciate this. I folded the paper and put it in my pocket. Tom, can I ask you something personal? Sure. Do you ever worry about losing all this? I gestured around his expensive kitchen. The house, the business, the lifestyle. He looked puzzled. What do you mean? I mean, you've got a lot riding on this development project. What happens if something goes wrong? Nothing's going to go wrong. I've been planning this for 2 years. Every detail has been checked and double-checked. But hypothetically, what if it did? What if the city council said no, or there was some kind of legal challenge? Tom's confidence never wavered. That's not going to happen, Grant. I've got everything under control. I'm sure you do. I'm just naturally paranoid about risk, you know? Occupational hazard. Well, you don't need to worry about me. This project is solid. I finished my coffee and stood up. Thanks for the recommendations. And Tom, thanks for being such a good friend. It's nice to know I can count on you. Of course, buddy. Anytime. As I drove home, I thought about Tom's absolute confidence in his project's approval. He'd done his homework, built relationships with city council members, followed all the proper procedures. He had no reason to think anything would go wrong, which was exactly why my plan would work. That afternoon, I drafted a letter to the City Planning Commission. I identified myself as a concerned citizen and taxpayer, and I raised questions about the height variance that Tom's project required but hadn't requested. I cited specific sections of the zoning code and attached copies of the relevant documents I'd obtained from the planning office. I didn't accuse anyone of wrongdoing or make inflammatory statements. I simply pointed out a discrepancy in the application and requested that the commission review the matter before granting approval. Then I made copies of the letter and mailed them to all 7 city council members, the mayor, the planning commission chairman, and the local newspaper's city hall reporter. By Monday morning, Tom's sure thing would become a bureaucratic nightmare that could delay his project for months or even derail it completely. I sealed the envelopes and drove to the post office. As I dropped them in the mail slot, I thought about Tom's confidence, his casual betrayal, his assumption that he could take whatever he wanted without consequences. He was about to learn otherwise. Sunday evening, I was reading in my living room when Erin came home from her weekend with her sister. She looked relaxed and happy, with the kind of glow that comes from a romantic getaway. "How was your weekend?" I asked, without looking up from my book. "Nice. Quiet. We just relaxed and caught up." "That's good. You needed a break." She hesitated in the doorway, like she wanted to say something else. Finally, she asked, "How was your weekend?" "Productive. I got a lot done around the house." "That's good." She went upstairs, and a few minutes later I heard the shower running. I imagined her washing away the evidence of her weekend with Tom, preparing to return to her double life. But her double life was about to become much more complicated. My phone buzzed with a text message from Tom. "Thanks again for stopping by yesterday. Hope those broker recommendations work out for you." I typed back, "I'm sure they will. Good luck with your city council meeting tomorrow." "Thanks. Should be a slam dunk." I smiled as I set the phone aside. Tom had no idea that his slam dunk was about to become an airball and that I was the one who'd moved the basket. The first phase of my plan was in motion. By tomorrow evening, Tom would realize that his perfect life wasn't as secure as he'd thought. And this was just the beginning. Monday morning started with a phone call that made my coffee taste like victory. Tom's voice was strained, barely controlled panic bleeding through his attempt at casual conversation. "Grant, hey, it's Tom. Listen, I hate to bother you, but I'm dealing with a situation here and I could use some advice." "What kind of situation?" "It's this development project. Someone sent letters to the city council raising questions about the height requirements. Now they want to postpone Tuesday's hearing until they can review the zoning compliance." I made appropriate, sympathetic noises. "That sounds frustrating. Any idea who sent the letters?" "No clue. Just some concerned citizen, apparently. But the timing couldn't be worse. My investors are expecting approval this week." "I'm sorry to hear that, Tom. Is there anything I can do to help?" "Actually, yeah. You know people at the insurance company who deal with city contracts, right? Maybe someone could put in a good word with the council members?" The desperation in his voice was music to my ears. "I can make some calls, see what I can find out." "I'd really appreciate that, Grant. This project means everything to me." "I know it does. Don't worry, we'll figure something out." After we hung up, I poured myself another cup of coffee and opened my laptop. The local newspaper's website had already posted a story about the delayed hearing. The reporter had done his homework, explaining the zoning discrepancy in detail and quoting several council members who expressed concern about approving a project that didn't meet current height restrictions. Tom's slam dunk had become a public controversy, complete with quotes from neighborhood groups worried about the precedent of allowing developers to exceed zoning limits. I spent the morning at work, but my mind was on the next phase of my plan. Tom's business problems were just the beginning. He'd betrayed his wife and his best friend, and he deserved consequences that went beyond a delayed construction project. At lunch, I drove to Romano's Italian Bistro, the restaurant where Tom and Erin had been meeting. It was an upscale place downtown, the kind of spot where business people went for private conversations and romantic lunches. The hostess, a young woman with bright red lipstick, greeted me with a professional smile. "Table for one?" "Actually, I'm hoping you can help me with something. I'm planning a surprise for my wife's birthday, and I know she's been here recently with a friend. I was wondering if you could tell me which table they usually request." "I'm sorry, but we don't discuss our customers' dining preferences." I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo of Erin and Tom together, one I'd found on Tom's social media from a charity event last year. "They've been coming in regularly on Thursday afternoons. I just want to make sure I request the right table for the surprise." The hostess studied the photo, and recognition flickered across her face. "Oh, them. Yes. They always ask for table 12 in the back corner. Very private, very romantic." "Perfect. Can I make a reservation for this Thursday, same time they usually come in?" "Of course. What name should I put it under?" "Harris. Grant Harris." Thursday afternoon, I sat at table 12 with a clear view of the entrance. At exactly 1:15, Tom and Erin walked in together. They were holding hands, laughing about something, completely absorbed in each other. The hostess started to lead them toward their usual table, then stopped when she saw me. Confusion crossed her face, followed by understanding. She whispered something to Tom and Erin, both of whom turned to look in my direction. The expression on Erin's face was priceless. Shock, guilt, and anger cycled through in rapid succession. Tom just looked sick. I raised my water glass in a mock toast and smiled. They had a brief, heated conversation with the hostess, then turned and left the restaurant. My phone buzzed with angry text messages from Erin, but I didn't bother reading them. The message had been delivered. That evening, Erin stormed into our house like a hurricane. "What the hell was that about?" she demanded. I was sitting in my recliner, watching the news. "What was what about?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about. The restaurant. That little stunt you pulled." "Oh, that. I was having lunch and happened to see you and Tom together. I thought it was interesting since you told me you were in budget meetings all afternoon. You followed us there." "Actually, I was there first. You followed me." She crossed her arms and glared at me. "This is exactly the kind of petty behavior I was talking about. You're making this situation more difficult than it needs to be." "I'm making it difficult?" I muted the television and turned to face her. Erin, you're having an affair with my best friend, and I'm the one making things difficult? I told you the truth about Tom and me. I was honest with you. You were honest about the affair. You weren't honest about the lies, the sneaking around, the using our house while I was out of town. Her face went pale. How did you know about that? I know about a lot of things, Erin. The question is, what are you going to do about it? What do you mean? I mean, you have a choice. You can end this thing with Tom and we can try to work on our marriage, or you can continue with your affair and deal with the consequences. What consequences? I picked up a manila folder from the side table and handed it to her. Take a look. She opened the folder and found printouts of her emails with Tom, screenshots of their text messages, copies of credit card statements showing their lunch dates and hotel visits. Her hands were shaking by the time she reached the last page. You went through my private emails? You used our joint credit card to pay for hotel rooms. That made it my business. This is invasion of privacy. It's probably illegal. Actually, it's not. We're married, and these are joint accounts. I have every legal right to access this information. She closed the folder and threw it on the coffee table. What do you want, Grant? I want you to understand that actions have consequences. You and Tom thought you could do whatever you wanted without anyone getting hurt. You were wrong. Are you threatening me? I'm educating you. There's a difference. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her calculating, trying to figure out how much damage I could do, how far I was willing to go. Tom's business is in trouble, she said finally. I heard about that. Something about a zoning issue? You know something about that, don't you? I know that developers should be more careful about following city regulations. You did this. You're the one who sent those letters. I shrugged. I'm a concerned citizen. I have the right to question city planning decisions. You're trying to ruin him. I'm holding him accountable, just like I'm going to hold you accountable. For what? For 15 years of marriage, for the promises you made, for the trust you violated. She was quiet for a moment, then asked, What do you want from me? I want you to choose, Tom or trying to save our marriage, but you can't have both. And if I choose Tom, then you'll discover that your comfortable life isn't as secure as you thought. That sounds like a threat. It's a promise, Erin. I'm very good at keeping promises. She picked up the folder and headed for the stairs. I need time to think. Take all the time you need, but understand that every day you continue this affair, the consequences get worse. She paused at the bottom of the staircase. I never meant for it to happen this way. But you're not sorry it did? No, she said quietly. I'm not sorry. Then we understand each other perfectly. After she went upstairs, I opened my laptop and checked the news. Tom's zoning problems had gotten worse. A neighborhood group had formed to oppose the project, and they'd hired a lawyer to challenge the variance application. The delay would cost Tom thousands of dollars in carrying costs and could potentially scare off his investors. But that was just the beginning. I had plans for Tom that would make zoning issues seem like minor inconveniences. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. We need to talk. Jenny. Tom's wife had figured out something was wrong. The dominoes were starting to fall faster than I'd anticipated. I typed back, Tomorrow, coffee shop on Main Street, 10 a.m. Her response came immediately. I'll be there. The next phase of my plan was about to begin, and this time I wouldn't be working alone. Jenny Reddick looked older than her 36 years as she sat across from me in the coffee shop. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she wore minimal makeup, like she'd left the house in a hurry. Dark circles under her eyes suggested she hadn't been sleeping well. Thank you for meeting me, she said, wrapping her hands around her coffee cup like she needed the warmth. Of course, though I have to admit, I'm curious about what you want to discuss. She studied my face for a moment, then asked, How long have you known? About Tom and Erin, since last week. I've suspected for months. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the pain underneath. Tom's been different, distracted, secretive, working late, taking mysterious phone calls. All the classic signs. I'm sorry, Jenny. I know this is difficult. Are you? Sorry, I mean? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? I mean, you don't look like a man whose world has fallen apart. You look like someone who's planning something. She was more perceptive than I'd given her credit for. I'm dealing with the situation in my own way. By sabotaging Tom's business? I raised an eyebrow. What makes you think I had anything to do with that? Because Tom's been obsessing over those zoning letters, and you're the only person we know who would have both the knowledge and the motivation to cause that kind of trouble. Tom brought that trouble on himself by not following proper procedures. Maybe, but the timing is awfully convenient. I took a sip of my coffee and waited for her to continue. Here's what I think happened, Jenny said. Erin told you about the affair, probably in the most hurtful way possible. Instead of falling apart or confronting Tom directly, you decided to get revenge. The zoning issue was just your opening move. That's an interesting theory. It's not a theory, it's a fact. She leaned forward. The question is, what are you planning to do next? Why do you want to know? Because I want to help? Now I was genuinely surprised. Help with what? Destroying my husband's life. Her voice was calm, matter of fact. Tom thinks he can have his affair and keep everything else. His business, his house, his reputation. I want to make sure he loses it all. Jenny, do you know what he told me last night? She didn't wait for an answer. He said he's been thinking about our marriage, and he's not sure he's happy anymore. He wants to take some time to figure out what he wants. I'm sorry. He's planning to leave me, Grant. He's going to take half of everything we've built together and start a new life with your wife. And he expects me to just accept it gracefully. The bitterness in her voice was like acid. I understood the feeling. What did you tell him? I told him to take all the time he needs. I'm very understanding that way. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. What he doesn't know is that I've been preparing for this conversation for months. Preparing how? I've been documenting everything. Bank statements, credit card records, business expenses. I know about every hotel room, every expensive lunch, every gift he's bought for her with our money. That's smart. I also know about his business finances. Tom tells me everything when he's stressed. How much he's borrowed, which properties he's leveraged, how much this development project means to his company's future. I was beginning to see where this was going. And you think we could work together to make his situation worse? I know we can. You understand his business vulnerabilities, and I understand his personal finances. Together, we could make sure he loses everything. What about Ashley, your daughter? Jenny's expression softened slightly. Ashley's 18 and starting college in the fall. She's smart, independent, and she'll be fine no matter what happens between Tom and me. In fact, she'll probably be better off not watching her parents pretend to be happy. This could get messy, Jenny. It's already messy. The question is whether Tom gets to walk away unscathed while we pick up the pieces. I considered her proposal. Having an inside source of information about Tom's finances would be incredibly valuable, and Jenny clearly had the motivation to see this through. What exactly are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we pool our resources and our knowledge to make sure Tom faces real consequences for his choices. She pulled a folder from her purse and slid it across the table. This is everything I've gathered so far. I opened the folder and found detailed financial records going back 2 years. Bank statements, loan documents, business contracts, insurance policies. It was a complete picture of Tom's financial life. This is very thorough, I said. I used to be an accountant before Ashley was born. I know how to follow a paper trail. And what do you want in return? I want Tom to lose his business, his house, and his reputation. I want him to understand what it feels like to have everything you've worked for taken away by someone you trusted. That's a lot of anger, Jenny. 17 years of marriage, Grant. 17 years of supporting his dreams, raising his daughter, building a life together, and he's throwing it all away for an affair with his best friend's wife. Fair enough, but we need to be smart about this. Everything we do has to be legal and defensible. Agreed. I'm not interested in breaking the law. I just want justice. We spent the next hour going through the financial documents. Tom's situation was even more precarious than I'd realized. He'd borrowed against everything he owned to finance the development project. If it failed, he'd lose not just his business, but his house, his investments, even his daughter's college fund. There's something else, Jenny said as we prepared to leave. Tom's been having problems with one of his business partners, a man named Robert Chen who invested $2 million in the project. What kind of problems? Chen's been asking questions about cost overruns and delays. Tom's been reassuring him that everything's on track, but if the city council rejects the project, Chen's going to want his money back immediately. And Tom doesn't have it, not without liquidating everything else. This was better than I'd hoped. Tom wasn't just facing zoning problems, he was sitting on a financial powder keg that could explode at any moment. Jenny, I think this partnership is going to work out very well. I hope so, because I want Tom to understand that there are consequences for betraying the people who love you. As we left the coffee shop, I felt a sense of satisfaction I hadn't experienced since this whole mess began. Tom and Erin thought they held all the cards, but they'd underestimated their opponents. They were about to learn that revenge, when properly planned and executed, could be far more devastating than they'd ever imagined. And the best part was, we were just getting started. That evening, I sat in my home office reviewing Jenny's financial documents and planning the next phase of our campaign. My phone buzzed with a text from Erin. "Tom and I are going away this weekend. We need space to think about our future." I typed back, "Have fun. Make sure you enjoy it while you can." Her response was immediate. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means the future might not turn out the way you're expecting." She didn't reply, which was probably wise, because if she knew what Jenny and I were planning, she'd realize that their romantic weekend getaway might be the last carefree time they'd have for a very long while. I opened my laptop and started typing a new document. Phase 2, Financial Destruction. Tom wanted to take everything that mattered to me. It was time to return the favor. The weekend passed quietly. Erin and Tom went to their romantic retreat, posting carefully cropped photos on social media that showed beautiful mountain scenery but avoided showing them together. They were still trying to maintain the illusion of their secret affair, unaware that their secret was about to become very public. Monday morning brought the first crack in Tom's carefully constructed world. I was having breakfast when my phone rang. Tom's name appeared on the caller ID, and his voice sounded strained when I answered. "Grant, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Of course. What's going on?" "Jenny's been acting strange lately, asking questions about my business, wanting to see financial documents. She's never shown interest in that stuff before." I made my voice sound concerned. "That does seem odd. Any idea what triggered it?" "I don't know, but yesterday she asked me point blank if I was having an affair." "What did you tell her?" "I denied it, obviously, but she didn't seem convinced." He paused. "Grant, you haven't said anything to Jenny, have you? About Erin and me?" The desperation in his voice was beautiful. "Tom, I haven't told anyone about your situation. That's between you and Erin." "Okay, good. I can't afford any complications right now. The business is under enough pressure as it is." "How are things going with the zoning issue?" "Not well. The city council postponed the hearing again. They want a full environmental review now, which could take months. My investors are getting nervous." "I'm sorry to hear that. Is there anything I can do to help?" "Actually, there might be. You mentioned you know people who work with city contracts. Could you put me in touch with someone who might have influence with the council?" "I can make some calls," I lied. "But Tom, you might want to consider having a backup plan just in case." "What do you mean?" "I mean, if this project doesn't work out, what are your options? Do you have other investments, other sources of income?" The silence on the other end of the line told me everything I needed to know. Tom had put all his eggs in one basket, and that basket was about to fall. "I'll figure something out," he said finally. "This project is going to happen, Grant. It has to." After we hung up, I called Jenny with an update. She answered on the first ring. "He's panicking," I told her. "The pressure is getting to him." "Good. I confronted him yesterday about the affair. He denied it, of course, but I could see the guilt all over his face." "How did he react?" "Like a trapped animal. He's been pacing around the house, making phone calls, trying to salvage his business deal. I almost feel sorry for him." "Almost?" "Then I remember that he's been lying to me for months while planning to abandon our marriage for your wife." Speaking of Erin, she and Tom went away together this weekend. They're not even trying to be discreet anymore. "Perfect. That gives us more evidence for the divorce proceedings." "About that, are you sure you want to go through with a divorce? Once we start down that path, there's no going back." "Grant, my marriage ended the day Tom decided to cheat on me. I'm just making it official." "Fair enough. What's our next move?" "I've been thinking about that. Tom's business partner, Robert Chen, is the key. If Chen pulls his investment, Tom's project collapses completely." "How do we make that happen?" "We don't have to make it happen. We just have to make sure Chen knows about Tom's personal problems and how they might affect his judgment as a business partner." "You want to tell Chen about the affair?" "I want to tell Chen that Tom is going through a messy divorce and might not be in the right frame of mind to manage a $20 million project." It was brilliant in its simplicity. Chen wouldn't care about Tom's personal life, but he'd care very much about anything that threatened his investment. "When do we approach him?" "Today. I already looked up his office address. We can go together, the concerned wife and the worried friend." 2 hours later, Jenny and I sat in Robert Chen's downtown office. Chen was a small, intense man in his 50s who'd made his fortune in commercial real estate. His office was decorated with photos of successful projects and awards from various business organizations. "Thank you for seeing us on short notice," Jenny began. We're here because we're concerned about Tom Reddick and how his personal problems might affect your business relationship. Chen's expression remained neutral, but I could see the interest in his eyes. What kind of personal problems? Tom is having an affair, Jenny said matter-of-factly. He's planning to leave me and our daughter to start a new life with his mistress. The stress of maintaining this double life, combined with the pressure of your development project, is affecting his judgment. I'm sorry to hear about your marital problems, Mrs. Reddick, but I'm not sure how this affects me. It affects you because Tom hasn't been honest with you about the project's status, I said. The zoning issues aren't minor delays. They're major obstacles that could shut the project down completely. Chen leaned forward. What do you mean? Tom never properly applied for the height variance the project requires. When the city discovered this oversight, they postponed approval indefinitely. Tom hasn't told you this because he's been distracted by his affair. Is this true? Chen asked Jenny. I'm afraid so. Tom's been so focused on his personal life that he's neglected the business details that matter to investors like you. Chen was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Mrs. Reddick, why are you telling me this? Surely you want your husband's business to succeed? Mr. Chen, my husband is planning to divorce me and take half of everything we own to start a new life with his mistress. His business success or failure doesn't benefit me anymore. What benefits me is making sure you have all the information you need to make good decisions about your investment. Chen nodded slowly. I appreciate your honesty. Mr. Harris, what's your interest in this situation? Tom's having an affair with my wife, I said simply. I want to make sure everyone involved understands the full scope of what's happening. I see. Chen stood up and walked to his window, looking out at the city skyline. Mr. Reddick assured me last week that the zoning issues were minor and would be resolved quickly. Tom's been saying what he thinks you want to hear, Jenny said. The reality is much more complicated. Chen returned to his desk and opened a file folder. I've invested $2 million in this project based on Mr. Reddick's assurances that all permits and approvals were in hand. If that's not true... It's not true, I confirmed. The project needs city council approval for both use and height variances. There's organized neighborhood opposition, and the approval process could take many more months. Or it might never happen at all, Jenny added. Chen closed the file and looked at both of us. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I'll be having a conversation with Mr. Reddick this afternoon. As we left Chen's office, Jenny and I exchanged satisfied glances. We just lit the fuse on Tom's financial bomb. How long do you think it will take? Jenny asked as we walked to our cars. Not long. Chen's not the type to wait around when his investment is threatened. I was right. That afternoon, my phone rang. Tom's voice was barely controlled panic. Grant, I need help. Chen is pulling out of the project. He wants his money back immediately, and I don't have it. What happened? Someone told him about the zoning problems and made it sound much worse than it actually is. He thinks I've been lying to him. Have you? I've been optimistic about the timeline, but I haven't lied about anything important. Tom, being overly optimistic with investors is the same as lying. You know that. I need to find another investor, fast. Do you know anyone who might be interested in a development project? Not anyone with $2 million lying around. What am I going to do, Grant? If I can't replace Chen's investment, I'll lose everything. Maybe it's time to cut your losses. Sell what you can, pay back what you owe, and start over. Start over? His voice cracked. Grant, I'm 40 years old. I can't start over. People do it all the time. Not people with my obligations. The house payments, Ashley's college tuition, the business loans. I need this project to succeed. Then you should have been more careful about following proper procedures. After we hung up, I felt a moment of genuine satisfaction. Tom's perfect life was crumbling, and he was finally beginning to understand what it felt like to lose everything you'd worked for. But we weren't finished yet. Jenny and I had more surprises in store for both Tom and Erin. The perfect storm was just beginning. 3 months later, I sat in my lawyer's office, signing the final divorce papers. Erin had fought the settlement initially, but when presented with all the evidence of her affair and the financial damage it had caused, she'd accepted the inevitable. She got to keep her car and her personal belongings. I got everything else. Tom's situation had deteriorated even faster than I'd anticipated. Without Chen's investment, he'd been forced to declare bankruptcy. The house in Willowbrook Estates was in foreclosure, and his business had collapsed entirely. Jenny had filed for divorce and would receive half of whatever assets remained, which wasn't much. The final blow had come when Ashley, Tom's daughter, learned about her father's affair and the lies he'd told. She'd chosen to live with Jenny and had refused to speak to Tom since the truth came out. Tom and Erin were living together now in a small apartment across town. Both had found new jobs. Tom as a real estate agent for someone else's company, Erin as an administrative assistant. Their combined income was less than either of them had made individually before their affair destroyed their careers. Any regrets? My lawyer asked as I signed the last document. About the divorce? No. About how you handled the situation? I thought about that for a moment. Tom and Erin had lost their jobs, their homes, their reputations, and most of their friends. Their romantic affair had become a cautionary tale that people in our social circle still discussed in hushed tones. They made their choices, I said finally. They just didn't think through the consequences. And you did. I'm very good at analyzing risk. It's what I do for a living. As I drove home to my empty house, I reflected on everything that had happened. Erin had been right about one thing. There had been nothing I could do to stop her from having an affair with Tom, but there had been plenty I could do about everything else. My phone buzzed with a text message from Jenny. Tom's moving company just left. The apartment's all theirs now. I typed back, "How are you holding up?" Better than expected. Ashley and I are looking at houses this weekend, smaller than what we had, but it'll be ours. Good for you. Grant, I know we both got our revenge, but I hope you find a way to be happy again. You deserve better than what Erin gave you. Thanks, Jenny. You deserve better too. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car for a moment, looking at the house Erin and I had shared for so many years. It felt different now. Not empty, exactly, but quiet, in a way that suggested new possibilities. My phone rang. The caller ID showed my brother Mike's number. "Hey, how did the lawyer meeting go?" "It's official. The divorce is final." "How do you feel?" "Relieved, mostly. It's been a long 3 months." "Any word on Tom and Erin?" "They're together, living in that apartment complex on the south side, both working entry-level jobs, trying to rebuild their lives." "Do you think they're happy?" I considered the question. I think they're discovering that running away together isn't as romantic as they thought it would be, especially when you're both broke and unemployed. That's what they get for cheating. That's what they get for not thinking through the consequences of their actions. So what's next for you? I don't know yet. Maybe I'll travel, take some time to figure out what I want to do with the rest of my life. You could always move to Denver. The kids would love having Uncle Grant around more often. I might take you up on that. After we hung up, I went inside and made myself dinner. The house was quiet, but it wasn't the oppressive silence of a failing marriage. It was the peaceful quiet of a man who'd fought for what mattered to him and won. Later that evening, I was reading in my living room when the doorbell rang. Through the window, I could see a familiar figure on my front porch. Tom stood there looking older than his 40 years. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair unkempt, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He looked like a man who hadn't been sleeping well. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. "Hello, Tom?" "Grant, I know you probably don't want to see me, but I needed to talk to you." "About what?" "About everything that happened, about Erin, about my business, about how everything fell apart." "What about it?" "I know you were behind the zoning letters. I know you talked to Chen. I know you and Jenny worked together to destroy my life." "Is that what you think happened?" "I know that's what happened." His voice was tired, defeated. "The question is why? Why did you have to take everything? Why couldn't you just let Erin and me be together?" I looked at this man who had been my best friend for 20 years, who had betrayed me in the worst possible way, and I felt nothing but contempt. "Tom, you didn't just take my wife. You took my trust, my friendship, my sense of security in my own home. You sat at my kitchen table every Thursday night, drinking my beer and eating my food, while you were sleeping with my wife behind my back. I never meant for it to happen. But you're not sorry it did. Just like Erin said she wasn't sorry. I am sorry, Grant. I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I lost everything. I'm sorry my daughter won't speak to me. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry there were consequences. But you're not sorry you did it." He was quiet for a long moment, then nodded. "You're right. If I could go back and do it again, knowing what I know now, I'd probably make the same choices. At least you're honest about it. So what happens now? You've destroyed my business, my marriage, my relationship with my daughter. Are you satisfied?" I thought about his question. Was I satisfied? Tom and Erin had lost everything. Their careers, their homes, their reputations, most of their friends. They were living in a small apartment, working jobs that barely paid the bills, trying to build a life together from the wreckage of the lives they'd destroyed. "Erin told me there was nothing I could do about your affair," I said finally. "She was wrong. It turns out there was quite a lot I could do about everything else." "So this was all about proving a point?" This was about consequences, Tom. You and Erin thought you could take whatever you wanted without anyone getting hurt. You thought you were smarter than everyone else, that you could have your affair and keep your comfortable lives too. And now we have nothing. Now you have each other. Isn't that what you wanted?" He laughed bitterly. "You know what's funny? Living together in that tiny apartment, working those terrible jobs, dealing with all the stress and financial pressure, it's not very romantic. The affair was exciting when it was secret, when we were sneaking around, when it felt forbidden. Now it just feels like work." Most relationships do, eventually. Erin's been talking about maybe trying to work things out with you. She thinks if she apologized, if she promised to end things with me, you might take her back. And what do you think about that? I think you're too smart to fall for that, and I think you're too angry to forgive her. You're right on both counts. Tom nodded and turned to leave, then stopped. "For what it's worth, Grant, I understand why you did what you did. If someone had done to me what I did to you, I probably would have reacted the same way. No, Tom, you would have gotten angry and confronted me directly. You would have made threats and demands. You wouldn't have had the patience or the discipline to plan something like this." "You're probably right about that, too." I watched him walk to his beat-up sedan and drive away. It was the last time I ever saw Tom Reddick. 6 months later, I heard through mutual acquaintances that he and Erin had broken up. The stress of their reduced circumstances, combined with the guilt and recriminations over what they'd lost, had destroyed their relationship. Erin had moved back to her hometown to live with her parents. Tom was still in the city, working as a night security guard and living in a studio apartment. Their great love affair had lasted less than a year once it became their everyday reality. I never felt sorry for either of them. They'd made their choices with full knowledge of what they were risking. The fact that they'd been too arrogant or too stupid to anticipate the consequences wasn't my problem. As for me, I sold the house in Maple Ridge and moved to Denver to be closer to my brother's family. I found a new job with a consulting firm that specialized in risk management for small businesses. It was satisfying work, helping people identify potential problems before they became disasters. I dated occasionally, but I was in no hurry to remarry. I'd learned the hard way that trust, once broken, was almost impossible to rebuild. Better to be alone and content than married and miserable. Sometimes, late at night, I'd think about Erin's words that had started this whole mess. There's nothing you can do about it. She'd been wrong, of course. There had been plenty I could do about it, and I'd done it all.